I live in the Upper Delaware River Basin, right across the border from New York in Pennsylvania. And I was offered, my family was offered a gas lease for 19.5 acres. That was good for about $100,000 signing bonus. And this was in 2008. And started to look through the process because the narrative from the gas companies was so entirely different than what Catskill Mountain Keeper or Damascus Citizens or the other environmental groups were saying. Gas industry comes in and basically says, oh, it's not a big deal, it's minorly invasive, we might not even drill. There's, they don't mention any of the possible environmental problems. And then I heard groups like Damascus Citizens, Catskill Mountain Keeper, talking about, these toxic chemicals and what the process of hydraulic fracturing actually was. So I started to look into it. I found out that what you saw on the slide here, the Marcellus Shale, is 50% of New York State, 65% of Pennsylvania, half of Ohio, most of West Virginia. I also found out that the drilling was going on in 34 states, that we were in the middle of the largest domestic natural gas drilling campaign in history, and that there were really big problems happening all across the West. I decided to go first, and it was such a crazy thing to think of this huge transformation of New York State from one way to this industrial zone to produce natural gas. Same thing going for Pennsylvania. I mean, Pennsylvania and New York has had a lot of coal and gas production. The first oil well in the country was drilled in Pennsylvania. Right, in Titusville. And there's been coal production. There's a huge history of enormous contamination throughout Pennsylvania, but not in the Upper Delaware River Basin, which is part of this interconnected watershed that feeds New York City, Philadelphia, southern New Jersey, about 16 million people, which is where our property is. And it's a beautiful area, it's a pristine area, so I wasn't actually excited to think about it being industrialized. So that was the first wave of shock. So I started to look into it, and I saw that there was these huge problems with water contamination, air pollution, health problems out west, where they started this in Wyoming, Colorado, Texas, New Mexico, and then found out, like Wes said, that the hydraulic fracturing part of the natural gas industry was exempt from the Safe Drinking Water Act. And in 2005, the United States Congress, led by Dick Cheney's Energy Task Force, in the energy bill, passed this exemption to the Safe Drinking Water Act, which monitors underground injection of toxins. And what they were doing was injecting toxins underground, so as part of the process. And ironically, the EPA had investigated the process in 2004 and said, even though there's toxic material being injected under the ground, we shouldn't regulate it. But as it turns out, their peer review panel was 5 of 7 members had conflicts of interest within the industry. So you had a Halliburton guy and you had 2 guys from the energy companies, and they all didn't meet. I think they met once on the phone. And it was amazing to me that nobody had made a movie about this, and that there was very little online that I could find about it. So I went to this about 50 miles away, where some of these photographs that Wes is showing you are coming from, a small town called Dimmock. I went there in February of 2009. On January 1st, 2009, one of the residents' water well spontaneously exploded. I guess everybody was at a hangover party. They came home, and their water well was thrown up, the concrete cover was thrown up all over the yard. So that tipped them off to the fact that there was a problem with the water, and then they started to talk. My water's bubbling and fizzing. My water is strange colors. And they started to compare stories and went to the DEP and got water testing and found that some of them could light their water on fire. And they found these huge elevated levels of methane in their water, heavy metals in the water that are from the drilling muds. These are the initial fluids that they inject down the wellbore to lubricate the drill bit. And they found this water contamination situation to a place where their kids were getting sick and their animals were getting sick. I found out that huge portions of the New York City watershed were being leased, and that this was an incredible and substantial threat to New York City's water supply, as well as it was to mine, and to this huge number of people, 16 million people. And that throughout the United States, this process was going on with little to no regulation. And when I got to Dimmock and I found these people who were completely freaked out. They were in a rural area, and when I arrived there, the fear in the air was just a palpable situation. The Halliburton trucks swarming everywhere, wells being drilled, people couldn't trust their water, and no one knowing who to trust and what to do. The DEP, Pennsylvania DEP, walking in arm with Cabot Oil and Gas to test water, and they're saying the water is fine, and then the residents are offering the DEP glasses of water to drink, and they won't drink it. So they knew something was up. And then tests came back later, which showed that there were these contaminants in the water, and that the gas that had migrated into those into their water wells was coming from those production layers, and that they had a huge problem. So then I went out to Colorado, Wyoming, Texas, New Mexico, Louisiana, Arkansas. I went to about 25 different states. In the film Gasland, it's a road movie. It's about 10 different states you can watch. And if you have HBO, you can go home and watch it tonight. It's on demand on our website, GASLANDthemovie.com. You can go and look at several clips from the film. You can also figure out. You can also write letters to Congress right there. If you click on New York State, you can see that there's a number of different things. And one of the things that's really important to deal with right now is there's this moratorium bill. Is it still alive? Do we know?
Yeah, there's one last minute. The next time they come together, they could vote on it.
Yeah. Well, there's a moratorium bill for 1 year at the New York State legislature, both in the Assembly and the Senate. It has enough votes to pass, and it's John Sampson, who's a senator from Brooklyn, who's the Senate leader, has not brought it to the floor. We don't know why. But if there were to be a moratorium enacted in New York State, it would be a shot heard around the world. It's so hugely significant that a major state like New York State would pass a moratorium that it's something that all the people in the West in my documentary said, take this back to New York and get something done. This would be something. So I want everybody here to go to GASLANDthemovie.com tonight, look at the moratorium bill information, and write an email or call Senator Sampson and say, we're in New York City, we're incredibly concerned with this, and if you don't put this bill in front of the Senate for a vote tomorrow, you're gone. We'll call all of our friends in Brooklyn and tell them we're going to vote for the Green Party or for the Republicans, anything, to just say this is ridiculous. Because it is absolutely ridiculous. Because what this amounts to, basically, is injection of toxins directly into the water supply. And no one has been able to stop them. And it makes no sense that in New York State, with this incredible tradition of activism that you have, that it couldn't be stopped here, when New York City's water supply is at risk. And New York City's water supply is it's worth so much more than what this gas is.